Yeah, I guess it's kind of weird to go out there and upload a video talking about the Canucks just a few hours before they play off against the Washington Capitals, but I wanted to go over some of the other stories before we dived into this one. So, Filip Hronek, Seattle Kraken, Daniel Sprong, as well as the Elias Pettersson, Dylan Cousins talk with the Detroit Red Wings. But in this video, we are going back over onto Elliotte Friedman's 32 thoughts from earlier this morning. Take a look at this. What happened between the Canucks and Rangers from January 8th, 10 a.m.? This will be linked in the description alongside of the ExpressVPN link, so go out there and check it out if you do need any VPN services. However, this article, very appropriately titled Canucks and Rangers Talk, you know what? There's some extra tidbits of info in here that I do think we can talk about and dive into. The article actually starts out by talking about the Scott Wedgwood injury, and it also talks about some of the other things here, but ultimately, if you scroll down past the Connor Bedard stuff and you get past all the Chicago talk, you will see commentary made on thoughts number 5 and 6. 5. Agents always attend the World Juniors, so at the end of Ottawa's event, it allowed Brian Bartlett, who is the agent for JT Miller, and Pat Brisson, Elias Pettersson's agent, to see their clients face-to-face and chat with the Canucks in Montreal. As Quinn Hughes has said, if the team was playing better, there would be less noise. And as Elias Pettersson told Ian McIntyre, I know I can do better, I know what I can do, and that's what I'm focused on doing. That's the right attitude, because you can always rewrite the narrative. But I stick to what I've said the past few days. The Canucks are investigating the market for both players, and as I write this, there is no certain outcome. There are definitely a lot of teams trying to figure out why it's at this point, and how that affects the pursuit of either player. Some relationships are difficult to repair. So, it's interesting, firstly, that the agents for the players went out there and met with the players themselves. That's not necessarily too surprising, I'd say. Like, I would assume that because a lot of players and agents and stuff are in the same area, you would probably see a lot of connections going out there, and I think this also relates heavily to what we had talked about last week, I'm pretty sure it was, where we went over how Boston scouts, Utah scouts, and Pittsburgh scouts were watching the Laval versus Abbotsford game in the American Hockey League. Why were they watching it? Well, is it because they're going out there and stalking, trying to scout out Montreal and Vancouver prospects? Maybe, but I think the real answer is it's because it was the day that the World Juniors was taking a break, and that game was indeed on in the area in Laval. So, obviously, with all the hockey people and hockey minds connected at the World Juniors, you will see some overlap when NHL teams are in the area too. But with Pat Brisson meeting EP and Brian Bartlett meeting JT, it also gives us an opportunity to talk about the trades. And with Elliotte Friedman saying that both of these guys are indeed still on the market and that other teams are thinking about it, it does become a lot more intriguing when you acknowledge that last point. Some relationships are difficult to repair. Friedman didn't need to put that last sentence in there, but I do think there's reason to acknowledge there might be some sort of a telltale sign within it. Again, it's Friedman we're talking about here. It's not me. I like to toss in random crap and stupid sentences in my commentaries all the time, but Elliotte Friedman tends to put every word carefully and use every word carefully, so we'll see whether or not this means anything more. Here's thought number 6 on the same 32 Thoughts article. The Athletic's Josh Yohe reported that Vancouver turned down a Miller for Zibanejad deal, and I believe he is correct, with some semantics. A few weeks ago, New York denied it, but all it takes is for someone like Yohe to shake it out, and the information follows. You'll remember that when JT Miller took his mental health break, the Rangers who covet the player were in Vancouver. From what I understand, they approached the Canucks to discuss what something could look like, and Zibanejad was included in the conversation. I don't know that Zibanejad, who has a no-move clause, was ever approached. I asked at that time and I didn't receive a clear answer. I also think it was actually a bigger deal, and one of the issues is that Vancouver adores Braden Schneider, whom the Rangers do not want to trade. This would be the second time New York has rejected a Vancouver attempt for him. And so, okay, we are diving back into the rejected trade talk and going over what actually happened between the Rangers and the Canucks. Friedman saying here that it wasn't necessarily Mika Zibanejad 1-for-1 for Miller, and I think that actually was one of the thoughts that was maybe misconstrued a little bit the past little while here, because we did make the video the other day talking about the Miller and Zibanejad rejected trade, but we also did speak a lot over the past few weeks about other Miller to New York ideas. So with Friedman here saying that he actually thinks it was a bigger deal in between the Zibanejad-Miller stuff and not just one-for-one Zibby for Miller, it does make sense that there might have been some other asset that Vancouver would have wanted that the Rangers had to say no to, with this particular aspect potentially being Braden Schneider, which the Rangers did not want to give away. It makes sense. I mean, they've been very committed to the guy, and he has been one of the better players in their development system, prospect-wise, and on the team-wise, too. I mean, Braden Schneider, right-handed guy, big dude, young dude, there's certainly a lot of value that he brings to the table here, and for the Vancouver Canucks to target a potential top 4 right-handed defenseman, a guy who's a top 4 defenseman pretty much right now if you stretch it out a little bit. I mean, he gets 17-minute games here and there. There are other nights where he approaches 20, but ultimately, Braden Schneider is one of these guys that I do think the Canucks, if they were to dive into their potential options on defense that they want, he's one of the main dudes. Unfortunately, with the addition of Will Borgen in New York, Schneider's role has been slightly diminished, so maybe if the Canucks wanted to revisit those talks, there might be some sort of an inkling, but of course, if this is already the second time that Vancouver has asked for Schneider only to get rejected, it does kind of feel like a lost cause, but still, there will be reasons to go out there and talk about other dudes, like, for example, the player that is listed on the next thought of 32. It's number 7 here. The Rangers gave Zach Jones permission to talk to other teams. There's interest, and he's good enough to take advantage of a new opportunity. One caveat, though, since he's not a big guy, teams with a smallish blue line are an unlikelier destination. Zach Jones is a guy we had talked about a few days ago in a video discussing his feelings about being placed in the Rangers organization and how he feels he is rotting away. It was a really big deal, I would say, and it's one of these things that definitely does not sound good when you put it to paper, but Zach Jones was a guy who, at one point, was touted as an Adam Fox-light kind of defenseman, a guy who moves well, who can score points, but who just wasn't given any opportunities with the New York Rangers, and who is now in a potential spot to maybe get traded. I don't necessarily know if Vancouver would be targeting him, but I think he would be a reasonable player to consider on this team as a guy who might be better than Juleson, who might be better than Forbort or a Desharnais. Zach Jones is more offensive-leaning, and if you're sick of Eric Bronstrom already, like Rick Tocchet seems to be, maybe Zach Jones is the player instead to go out there and target. Although Miller for Zach Jones is obviously not going to be enough, there would need to be some extra stuff added in there, maybe it is a Zibanejad, who really knows, but I wanted to go out there and bring these guys' names up in a video because Elliotte Friedman, of course, went out there and talked about it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below if you're a Canucks fan or a Rangers fan. How do you feel about the Braden Schneider name being introduced into this conversation once again? Are you surprised that New York ended up rejecting this trade? What are your thoughts on the Miller-Zibanejad stuff that's going on here? And if you're a Canucks fan, how do you think this plays into what we're going to see later tonight against Washington? Vancouver Capitals going on later tonight. We'll make a post-game video about it, but for now, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the JT Miller and Elias Pettersson agents meeting up with the players, Elliotte Friedman's commentary on how both of these guys are still indeed being discussed in trade rumors, and whether or not you think the Mika Zibanejad, JT Miller stuff even has any legs. Do you think it's worth talking about? Do you think there are other options like a Zach Jones that the Vancouver Canucks would see value in and would be interested in grabbing onto their team instead? I honestly could see a world where it works, but you would probably need to add, honestly, if you think about some of the other names, if it's like Zibanejad with Zach Jones and maybe even another tweener guy who happens to be young for Miller, I think about it, but at the same time, I mean, we had discussed this yesterday, Mika Zibanejad is such an inferior player to JT, in my opinion, so who knows whether or not that's really the path to go down. But for now, thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.